Welcome, friends. Today's story will touch your heart deeply. The restaurant was glowing with warm candlelight. People laughed, glasses clinked, and among them sat a girl in a wheelchair, her trembling hands resting on her lap. She had been set up on this blind date as a cruel joke. Something she didn't yet know. Her eyes searched the doorway nervously, half hoping, half fearing what awaited. Then the doors opened. A tall man in a black suit walked in, calm, confident, yet carrying the gentle tiredness of a single father who's seen life's pain. He spotted her, and for a brief second, the laughter around seemed to fade. The cruel whispers stopped. He walked past the mocking faces and went straight to her. "Hi," he said softly, bending slightly, his voice warm. "You must be Emily." Her voice shook. "You're not leaving?" He smiled, not out of pity, but pure kindness. "Leaving? No. I came here to meet you." When he sat down and took her trembling hand into his, everyone went silent. The same people who'd laughed now stared in shame. She looked at him, tears filling her eyes. No one had ever looked at her like that, not with sympathy, but with respect. "You deserve to be here," he whispered. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." And at that moment, continued. Friends, if you felt the emotion in this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because every act of kindness can change a life. Channel Soul of Kindness. The soft music played in the background as waiters moved quietly between tables. But at their corner, time had almost stopped. Emily's heart was still racing. She couldn't understand why this man, a CEO, someone so polished and powerful, would even want to sit beside her. She hesitated, looking down at her lap. "You don't have to stay," she whispered. "I know what this is. They just wanted to make fun of me." He looked at her, really looked, and then slowly reached across the table. His voice was low but full of warmth. "Emily, I face mockery too. People laugh at what they don't understand." He smiled faintly, pain flickering in his eyes. "I was once a janitor, a single dad. I know how cruel the world can be." Her eyes widened, tears slowly rolling down her cheeks. "You a janitor?" He nodded. "Yes, I started from the bottom. I worked nights, changed diapers, and prayed for one more day of strength." His hand gently covered hers. "Don't let their laughter define your worth. They see your chair. I see your courage." Emily's voice broke. "You make it sound like I'm strong." He smiled gently. "You are strong and came here tonight. You showed up even when life tried to break you. That's real strength." She looked into his eyes, and for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. Behind them, the same group of men who had planned the cruel joke were now watching in silence, their laughter long gone. One of them lowered his head in guilt, realizing how heartless they had been. The CEO looked at them briefly, then turned back to her and said softly, "Let them see what real beauty looks like, the kind that shines from within." The candlelight reflected in her teary eyes, and she smiled a trembling, grateful smile that said more than words ever could. Continued. The dinner continued, but it wasn't just dinner anymore, it was healing. Emily's nervousness had melted into a quiet joy, and the CEO, whose name was Daniel, seemed to bring warmth into every word he spoke. The other guests could sense it too. This was no ordinary evening. A soft tune began to play, a slow, romantic melody that drifted through the restaurant like a gentle breeze. Couples began to rise and dance under the golden light. Emily watched them silently, her eyes lowering to her wheelchair. Her smile faded. Daniel noticed. He leaned closer. "You love dancing, don't you?" She blinked quickly, embarrassed. "I used to," she whispered. "Before the accident." "No, I just watch." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside her wheelchair. The entire restaurant paused. The music continued, but the air felt different, charged with emotion. He looked into her eyes and said softly, "May I have this dance?" Her lips parted. "Daniel, I can't." "Yes, you can," he interrupted gently. "Just trust me." He moved her chair slightly into the open space, placed one hand over hers on the armrest, and with the other, gently guided her in rhythm to the music. It wasn't a traditional dance, but in that moment, it was the most beautiful dance anyone had ever seen. The lights shimmered on her pink gown as she laughed through her tears. The people who once mocked her now stood still, many of them wiping their eyes. The manager dimmed the lights, and the spotlight fell softly on them. A girl who thought she was broken, and a man who showed her she was never less than perfect. As the music slowed, Daniel leaned closer and whispered, "You're dancing again, Emily. And, you didn't need legs for that. You only needed heart." She looked up at him, tears of joy streaming down. "You made me feel alive again." He smiled. "You were always alive, you just forgot how to see it." The entire restaurant burst into quiet applause. And in that glow of candlelight and kindness, the cruel joke that started this night had turned into something sacred. The moment a broken heart began to heal. Continued. The night had grown deeper. and the candles flickered softly as the restaurant began to empty. Emily and Daniel were still at their table, their hands resting close, their hearts silently speaking the words their lips could not. Emily looked down, her voice trembling. "Why did you really stay, Daniel? You don't even know me." Most people walk away when they see the chair. Daniel's expression softened, but for a moment pain shadowed his eyes. He looked away toward the city lights outside the window, his jaw tightening. "Maybe because I know how it feels to be abandoned," he said quietly. She tilted her head. "You?" He nodded slowly. 3 years ago, my wife passed away. A car crash. My little girl was in the back seat. She survived, but she hasn't walked since that night." Emily gasped softly, her eyes welling with tears. "Your daughter. She's paralyzed too." He nodded again, his voice breaking. "Every night she asks me why people stare at her, why she can't run like other kids. I never have the right words. But tonight," he looked at Emily with tears in his eyes. "Tonight I think I found him because of you." Her lips quivered. "Because of me?" He smiled faintly, taking her hand. "You smiled, Emily. You shined in a room full of cruelty. You showed me what real strength looks like. You reminded me what I need to teach my daughter, that she's not broken, just beautifully different." Tears streamed down her face, falling silently onto her dress. "I thought this night was a punishment," she whispered. "But maybe it was a gift." He nodded. "It was never a joke. It was destiny's way of making two broken hearts meet, so they could fix each other." In that moment, she felt something she hadn't in years. Belonging. The world that once mocked her now seemed small compared to the warmth in his eyes. Suddenly, the restaurant manager approached hesitantly, holding a small envelope. "Sir, someone left this on your table earlier." Daniel opened it, and inside was a note. "We're sorry. We didn't know she was more powerful than all of us combined." Tears filled his eyes as he looked back at Emily. "Seems like you've changed more than one life tonight." Emily smiled softly. "No, you changed mine." And as the city lights glittered through the window, the two sat hand in hand, two souls who had lost everything, yet somehow found the courage to begin again. Welcome, friends. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Emily's apartment window. The golden rays touched her face as she stared at the flowers. Daniel had sent white lilies and pink roses, tied with a small note that read, "You made me believe in miracles again." She smiled through her tears. It had been years since someone had seen her as more than a wheelchair, as a woman, as a soul. But Daniel, he had changed that in one night. Her phone buzzed. A message popped up. "Daniel, can I see you? Someone wants to meet you." "Curious," she agreed. A few hours later, Emily waited outside a park, the one where children played and laughter echoed. She adjusted her scarf nervously, wondering what this meeting was about. Then she saw him, Daniel, walking toward her, holding a little girl's hand. The girl, around 7, had bright blue eyes and sat in a small pink wheelchair. She smiled shyly when she saw Emily. Daniel knelt beside his daughter. "Sweetheart, this is the lady. I told you about the brave woman who showed me what real strength looks like." Emily's eyes softened. She bent slightly forward, smiling at the little girl. "Hi, I'm Emily." The girl's tiny hand reached out. "Daddy says you danced in your wheelchair." Emily laughed gently, wiping a tear. I did. "And maybe one day you and I can dance together." The little girl's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Oh, yeah." "Really?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Daniel watched the two of them, his heart heavy with gratitude. For the first time since his wife's death, he felt peace, as if life had finally given him back what it once took away. They spent hours together, laughing, talking, and feeding pigeons by the pond. The air was filled with laughter, not sorrow. When it was time to leave, Daniel looked at Emily and said softly, "You gave my daughter something doctors couldn't hope." Emily shook her head, her eyes glistening. "No, Daniel. You gave me something I thought I'd never have again, love." He took a step closer, his hand gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "Maybe this was never a joke, Emily. Maybe it was heaven's way of making sure two lonely hearts finally met." The little girl looked up at them and said innocently, "Daddy, are you going to marry her?" They both laughed through tears. Daniel knelt beside his daughter, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Maybe one day, sweetheart. Maybe one day." As the sun began to set, the three of them sat side by side, a man who had lost faith, a woman who had lost courage, and a child who had lost her mother, now finding all of it again, together. The camera panned out slowly, showing their silhouettes against the golden sky. Three hearts reborn through kindness and love. Narrator softly. Sometimes, soft piano music fades out. Friends, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, because every small act of kindness can heal someone's world. Channel Soul of Kindness.